Our next speaker is Naveen. So welcoming Naveen on stage, who will be talking about developing interfaces for both humans and machines. And I'm quite interested to learn about this topic. Sounds interesting. So let's give a big round of applause for Naveen.
Hey everyone, very good afternoon. So I'm Naveen. I'm senior software engineer working at Auth0 by Okta. Like if you want to know what we do, like Ankit explained how important privacy is, and if you want to just concentrate on your feature and leave that managing privacy and IAM solution, so you can check out Auth0. So today I'm here to talk about designing React component SDK. So before that, can I get a quick show of hands, people who have actually designed design libraries or a component library? Nice, we have plenty of people. So we know we have people who knows the requirement. So can I get a quick show of hands for people who have actually used components or design library and have struggled to customize and called our best friends, Copilot and agents to please customize this, please do this. Yeah, nice. So we have the requirement, we have the pain point. So let's talk about solutions. How do we build a component library that would help us to easily customize things as well as making our friends' life better, who's currently are our co-pilots and AI agents. So let's take a step back and talk about how designing a UI SDK library evolved. So previously, like for the past decade, it was completely assumed. So library gonna be just used by developers who would manually use documentation, read through what are the props and how do we customize, what are the things that are available. But that's not the case now. So we have, like I said, we have co-pilots. Like how do we make their life better? What do co-pilots read? So co-pilots can't just go and read documentations like us. So they just pass through the documentation. How is that's going to be managed currently? How do we design for those? And after copilots, we also have AI agents now, so which doesn't just give the code or review code. It will completely try to orchestrate a flow, like how to pitch in, create new components. Like we have many online platforms now, like example Lovable. Like if we want to build something, go just prompt it. They are going to give a new components. How are those handled? So that is what we are going to see. So the problems, the first thing is customization. So the very basic and the first thing that we would come when we want to use some component library is how easy it is to customize. So we all build our own products, right? So how can we make a component that are that will cater our requirement? How easy it is to customize. So first thing, I think we have many libraries right now. So, but the thing is do they expose good team tokens? Do they have something which we can touch each and every element that is composed of components? So when I mean component, customizing is, so suppose it's not just primitive. Think about end-to-end solutions for our end user, like a login box, or you might have your own dashboards. How do we make those customizable to our clients or someone who wants to use our product? So that is what the first problem is, very hard to customize. And docs. Like I told, docs were completely built for humans. It assumed we just go through the docs, we have this props, read it, and configure. But will copilots do that? No, right? So how do we update our docs to support copilots as well? And next thing, like I told, copilots, again, they just parse through the document. There is chances it can just give a wrong props, or it might not completely fix according to our requirements. That is the third problem. Like copilots can guess and can give us the broken code. And the fourth, I think Ashita talked about the monolith architecture. Like ultimately, once we build a product, like the final after we build ship, everything we talk about is performance optimization. So bundle blot. So what if I know since we talked about micro front ends, right? So we know we can solve this problem, but what if there is a dependency which itself is a monolith? How do we solve that? How do we remove this bundle blot? So that is the fourth pain point. And the fifth one, like I told, there should be some metadata, right, for Copilot to understand what is this component about? What does it take? What does it do? Like, how do I understand this component? So that is the fifth point. How do we solve this? How do we give metadata to Copilots? And the sixth one. So agents, like I told, how do we stitch? So suppose there is a multiple login forms or if we can do our payment gateways. How do we stitch the different components together? How does the agents know about this configuration? How can it build new flows together? So that is the pain point that we're going to solve. So now the solution. So first thing, like I told, like how difficult it is to customize each and every element in a component. Like suppose there is multiple screens or multiple buttons evolved. I want to just customize the font size of this button, have a different color for this button. How do we solve that? So I think many of you here would have used design tokens, right? So design tokens, we can have the CSS variable configured at root level. So that works for all the component. What if I want to do it only for a specific component? I want just this design token to be applied to that component. So we can expose something called as style variables. So where we can expose, like, which using the TypeScript, right, which can solve a lot of problems for us. We can define what is the styled type for this component so that end user knows, okay, like this component will have just this type, and this is the design token for that component, and it's very easy to understand for the developer as well, and for the AI. Even the AI will know, okay, this is the prop, so this is the design token, and I can just use this design token, and I can just change the color and font sizes and class names. So I think previously when we are using MUI, like they used to have a lot of weird class names. How do we go and dig deep into those and have our own custom class names for those, how use important tags, how do we do that? Like that was very hard to do as a developer. So how do we solve this? We can also have something called as classes variables, where we can pre-configure. Suppose there is a component which has different buttons, like also which will have a different form or a model or alert. We can expose all those class names of each model so that the main component will have everything exposed for the end users as well as copilots to understand, okay, these are the sub-component childs that are between this component, and we can customize this particular component using the class name. And next one is, like I told, TypeScript. Without TypeScript, how would have we survived? Like, how would end users know, like, how to define the interfaces? I think having a good type interface for a component helps a lot. So suppose, like I told, we can extend the subcomponents, expose what are the props that subcomponents would have, so that at least we'll understand each and every props that would propagate to every child of the main component. And JS docs. I guess everyone would have used JS docs, right? So having a proper hint and JS docs at each component, right? So that would, as a developer, it will be good for our colleagues as well, it would help him to understand, okay, there's a component that takes this input, and this is a props that accepts. So similarly, see the copilots as our colleagues, as our developers. It would just do the same thing, right? If you have a component installed, it will go check the prop and check the JS docs. It will try to understand what is the prop that is defined. And with that, with the type props or concise JS docs, like it would also help our copilots. Next thing is schema-driven. So suppose, like, if you're dealing with some huge form that would, suppose it's related to your personal information, then your payment information, there will be a lot of validations that has to be applied, right? So how do we customize those validations? So we can expose one more thing called a schema-driven props, where we'll have our own inbuilt validation. Suppose if end user or anyone wants to customize according to their requirement, they can do it through schema validation props as well. And for the copilots, again, since there is a prop and we also have our default validation, so it is very easy for it to understand there is already a default validation, and for it to suggest a better validation than that, so that we can pass it and we can customize according to our needs. Next one, like the bundle size, how do we solve it? So suppose we have, like, if anyone here would have used shared CN styled approach, right? So where we don't, suppose we are having 10 components from that design library, but we don't use those 10, but we just want one. How do we solve that? We have this shared CN style modular registry approach, where suppose you want to use just a sign-in form, and you don't want other components. You can use this CLI and just install the styles, design tokens, and components and subcomponents that are involved in this particular main components using shared CN approach. That is how we're going to solve this bundle bot problem. And fifth, so wiring components together. So as a developer, we know we have this documentation side where we can read and we can stitch in different components together. But what about copilots? How do they understand it? So we can have something called as, like, we already know about package.json, right, where we have defined our dependencies. We can read. we can do the same thing for our components. Like each component can have its own component JSON, where we can define its own dependencies, its own child components, what is its path, what are its design tokens, so that it's easy for copilots to just pass this JSON, and it can like really prompt a better component. It can suggest, it won't have any guessworks, no wrong props. It can make copilot's life a little better. And the sixth point, IIT9, right? So it's not just that we cater for one particular user or one particular like country or something. We might have to serve for a different region, different countries. So the main point is how can we customize or IIT9 this component. So we have something called as like language prop and IIT prop, based on which we can have our own default, which we don't have to worry about maintaining several languages. We can just have our default languages based on our preference, and we can make the end user pass in their own languages as whatever they want. Suppose they want to explore it in Latin or Arab or something, we can solve this problem by supporting IIT and prop. And yeah, now the prompt-based UI. Like I told, so this is how we're going to solve a lot of, like suppose we have the styling variables. We know this is a login form. And these are the variables. Like I think many of you would have solved, like there are multiple themes, like dark and light mode. So how do we solve this? And there will be a common props, like about font sizes and about font styles. We can have a variable expose. So with this, we'll solve both. Developer will understand to typescripting, as well as, like I told, Copilot will understand to this component JSON. And like I told, we have something called as custom messages. Like I told, again, suppose user wants to have his own language, like Arab or something, he can just pass in. Like we'll have this type interfaces defined so that he'll know what is the key for that content, and he can just dynamically pass those content. So that is the second one. Like I told, and schema validations, right? So suppose a login form will have email or phone numbers and other things, right? So we'll have our base schema inside, but user can also customize their schema with the use of the schema validation. And whatnot, like it's not just about using component, right? We might have to track we might want to track the user actions. We might want to like connect with our analytics team. So we can expose handle life section hooks, like something we call as on error action. What if like user failed to log in? Like how do we handle it? So we can expose this lifecycle hooks as well, and handlers what end user without like he can easily like add additional layer of catching those error, or he can like one more hook is that on before action. Suppose think there is a component payment or user profile deletion. Suppose you want to have additional check there before allowing user to delete. With this use of this lifecycle hook, you can just solve it. And this is how easy you can build stitch all together and make a component that is easy to customize and as well as IIT friendly, and you can manage your own lifecycle hooks. And the next one. So we spoke about how do we solve it, like how easy it is to customize, and how do we make Copilot's life better, and how it is for a developer. Now talking about bundle block. So suppose like we all saw like how huge it is to maintain an application which is huge in size, and how do we split it. So we know we can make use of lazy loading. I know, like, but can we go and do it for each component or each page or each dependencies that we import? Go do a lazy import of this dependency, but will that solve? Like I told, you don't have to use every components that are available in that library. So this CLI code ownership, that will just install. Suppose you want to use a MFA component. So we can build this CLI, which will just install you the login form. So where user, like, you can pass in the path where you want to install, and there is a type. What is this type of component that you are using, and the target where you want to have this. And again, we can mention all those dependencies. What is the dependency of this component? So this component just uses 3 dependencies. Okay, my problem is solved a little, so I just have very minimum dependency to use this component. And very simple for the end user. Just use a CLI. So just use a CLI and tell add login form. So I think you can check out all this on ChatCN if you guys haven't tried out. So it will just help you just install one particular component without having to have the entire library installed. And as well as, so one other thing is code ownership. So like, like dependencies, you won't have code ownership. You'll have to, if you find some issues, right, or something that you want to do additional, you have to go check the bundled file or DTS file. This will solve that problem. The code will directly reside in the end user's repo. So we'll have the full control of the code, and you will have full control of the component. He can build on top of it. He can have his own versions using the CLI method. So we don't have to struggle to debug or do anything. You can usually have your own ownership on the code that you use, so that it will solve a lot of problems for you, and it will help you build anything new on top of the existing components. And like I told, documentation. So documentation, okay, we have a library, we know how to customize it, but how crucial is it to document those? Not just for the developers, even for the machines. So developers, I know, like, I don't think no one would read 20 lines of like paragraph, and they would just go stitch the component together. The first point is like truth of source, like I told, TypeScript, right? So TypeScript, if we have a good TypeScript defined, copilots can directly go check out the open source GitHub libraries and as well as NPM package, and it would like definitely gonna like predict, or it won't hallucinate much, and it will give a good component output for you if you prompt it with a better way. And I told like JS docs. So JS docs, why is it useful? So there are a lot of LSP, right, language server protocols. So how it is easy for it to understand the JS docs, like intent. Suppose we would have used the tags like @params, @returns. What does this component return with that tag? And like another one that is @example. So how do we, if we have some tags, right, like in the JS doc, like suppose @example, you have a small code snippet for that, and it will be easier to for, as a developer, even for the Copilot to understand. And additionally on this, so suppose Copilot, we already know, like they train it on data. Suppose if you own your own repo, right? What if you have a different use cases? Like you have an example folder set up in your repos with different kinds of customization, different kinds of validation. So this will indirectly act as a training data for a Copilot. So it will use it, and it will predict, and it will be more robust when you like try to ask for better things in the future. So that's about the documentation. So now the payoff. So we learned like how the documentation should be, also like MDX, right? Right now, like if you check out each documentation, they'll have something like open with Vercel, or open with GitHub Copilot, or open with Gemini AI. So if we have some MDX files like attached, a link or download link for it to, it can directly download that MDX files, and it will be easier for the Copilot to parse and understand. So for the developers, right? So how it is useful, like I told, clear typed APIs. Let's think components as not just like a dumb UI elements. We can think it as an like how do we build a backend API, which will have a predictable or a declarative way, which will have strong schema validations, how it handles. And the next point, modular components. Like ultimately, after wiring up everything, it goes to the production. Now the users are scaling up. Everyone wants it to be faster. So but how do you do? How do you manage this? I think that is where, like I told, you can use the CLI method, just install whatever you are required, and it can also cater for multiple. Suppose you have micro front ends, right? So each teams would want to own their own code. It will definitely be in their own repository or something. With this, every team can use the base component. You design your design library in such a way that you'll have a base design one side, and each component can like extend it, customize it according to their need, and doesn't have to worry about versioning or doesn't have to worry about bundling. So that is the second point. And theming, like I told, like there is very good design tokens. If you expose the design tokens, like user can consume it very easily. So they don't have to worry about. As a developers, we also know like how to design it. What are the variables that we might require for each and every CSS overrides? So we have to structure it in such a way that use, again, the interfaces, use it, define those structure so that it will be useful for developers as well as Copilot. Again, we can provide like a built-in I18 support. So you don't have to like use any external library if you want. You can just, it's just about key value matching, right? So you can have your own small util function that will just read this key, and that will just map the value whatever user pass and whatever we maintain in a JSON file. So, and for the copilots, we also define the schema. We have component JSON, which will act as a manifest for the copilots, which will use, and even for if you have some automated pipelines, right? So we can use this manifest JSON. So where we'll define each and everything, like a dependency, like a target, like a path, or a files that are required for this. So this would like solve like agents, how would they orchestrate this flow together, and for the copilots to understand the schema JSON. So I think, yeah, like I told, the component metadata, right? So metadata will have a lot of dependencies to figure out, and you will have a single place, like where you can manage this dependency, only required for those components. So you don't have to worry about a huge package.json. You would have got an individual package.json that were like depends for the component, and it is easy to analyze. Like if you want to remove some dependency, unused dependency or something, it will be very helpful in managing those dependencies as well. I think with that, yeah, that's it. So I don't have any reference. So we have a like quick UI component library that's coming out next week. It's a beta launch. You can just visit auth0.com for that, and you will get the complete solution of this, and you can use this component with the new approach. Thanks, everyone.
React India.